So we're going to just jump right into these so we can see what we're doing here. So for example one, basically something like this. They're going to ask you to find the missing value of the inverse relationship, or they may say inverse variation, ever how they want to say it there. With ordered pairs at 2, 5, and 4, comma y. Okay. So again, not a real long word problem, but just enough of a word problem that's not just here it is, do this. So you got to kind of read through it. All right. The very first thing you have to do is you've got to look for the different types of variations we've talked about so far. And we've got two that we've talked about. We're going to throw a third one at you here in a little bit. We've talked about inverse. We've talked about direct. And then the third one we'll talk about in a little bit is joint. So basically, you're just trying to find one of those three words in here. And as soon as you see that one, or as soon as you see inverse, then we've got to know that if it says inverse, we need to know what the inverse equation is. Okay, so the inverse equation we're going to use is y equals k over x. Okay, so that's the part. And again, you've got two. We'll talk about joint variation a little bit, but we've got inverse or direct, and we'll do a direct one here in just a minute. So we've got y equals k over x. And so to find everything out on this one, basically it's just two steps that we have to do. Step one is you're going to take the first order pair and you're going to plug it in. And if you plug in that first order pair, that's going to tell us what the k value is going to be. Okay, so there's our first order pair right here. There's the x and the y. So all we're going to do is we're going to take the x equals 2 and y equals 5, and we're going to plug it in right here. So that's going to give us 5 equals k over 2. Okay, and if we got those two, how do we figure out what the k value is going to be there? You go, just multiply these two together, right? So we'll do 5 times 2. K value is 10. Okay. So first step, that's all you got to do is just take the first order pair and use that to figure out what your k value is. And once you use that first order pair, you can just kind of scratch it out that we're done with it. We don't need it anymore. And then step 2, now we know k equals 10. So we're going to use k equals 10. And then from the second order pair, we've got x is 4. We don't know what y is. Oh, yeah, that's helping, right? Sorry about that. So we're going to use the k equals 10 we've got here. We're going to use that second order pair, the 4 comma y, and we're going to plug it back into this equation.
Teachers at this time release any students that have 11.
K equals 10, 4 and y, we're going to plug that back into this y equals k over x that's up here. And once we do that, we've got everything we need. So we've got y's where we don't know. We've got k is 10. The x value is 4. So if you've got 10 over 4, we can simplify and make that 5 over 2. Or we can just say, change it to a decimal number, and you make it 2.5. Again, it doesn't matter which one it is in this case. Math Excel should let you give either answer there. So either 5 over 2 or 2.5. Okay. For the second one, we'll kind of go a little different route on this one, but basically along the same lines here. So for example, two, same thing. We're just going to do it just a little bit different though. So for this one, we're just going to write the equation for direct variation. That has the ordered pair for it. Okay, and again, first thing you're looking for is you're looking for either one of those three words. We've got direct variation here. So as soon as we see direct variation, that's where you kind of know that if we've got direct, then the equation is y equals k times x. Okay, so we've got one ordered pair. We'll do exactly the same as we did on the last one. We're going to plug in 4 for x, 8 for y, and then we just plug that part of it out. So 8 is there. K we don't know, so that's going to stay there. We know that the 4 is here. Okay, now the only thing with that one is with the k value being in front, you can basically just switch those two around because we're used to seeing it like that, where it's 4k and not k times 4. So for that one, all we got to do is just divide by 4. So we know that the k value is going to equal 2. Okay, and if they ask you to write an equation for it, all you need is that k value, and now you're just going to take the k value you've got and plug it back in here. So if k is 2, then that's just our equation right there. That's y equals 2x. Okay, and sometimes people get a little confused on that one. If you leave the k in, basically that's like a formula. When you actually plug in a number, now you've actually got an equation that you can use for that part. So just kind of think that this thing here, that's the formula. Same thing back up here. This is more, it's an equation, but you got to think it's more like a formula because it's got the k in it. When you actually put a number in it, now it's actually an equation that you can work with. Okay, so still the same setup. You still take whatever the first order pairs they give to you. You still plug it in the equation to figure out what your k value is. And sometimes they may just ask for the equation. So if they ask for just the equation, that's here. Now, this would be like a 2a and a 2b. Next thing we're going to do is now we're going to take that same question we've got there, and now we're going to basically do this. Now find the missing value. Of the ordered pair x10. Well, this would be more like if this is 2, this would be like 2a. You want to think about it this way? So 2a is to find the equation. Now this would be like 2b. Okay, so all we're going to do is we're going to take that equation we've got now with y equals 2x, and then we're going to use that to answer this question that we've got here. Okay, and this one should be pretty straightforward. Once you've got the equation, it should all really be pretty straightforward. You got y is equal to 2x. Well, that's x and that's y, so we've got 10 equals 2x. Divide those both by 2, so then we get x equals 5. Okay. The only thing they might do different, um, they may word it just a little bit different, but no matter what you do, it's always the same thing. They should give you at least one order pair that you have. And then once you've got the order pair, use that to figure out what your K value is, which gives you the equation. And then they'll give you a second ordered pair that you then find the missing value. So no matter how they word it, they'll all kind of be set up along those same lines when it comes off of it. Okay, so whether it's inverse or direct, it's still basically the same thing as you go through these. So there's our inverse equation, there's our direct equation. So it's just a matter of knowing which word they give to you as to which equation you got to use. So there's our direct equation. Again, there's our inverse equation. Okay, now the second one, the third thing that we'll do, we haven't talked about this one just yet. Um, but joint variation, it's a third type, and it's there's no particular formula for joint variation. All you got to know for joint variation basically is this one. It's just an extension of direct variation. It's just that for joint variation, instead of it just being two variables, you're going to have three variables. Instead of just y equals k times x, it'll be y equals k times x times p times q times whatever. So it's more variables that are multiplied together. Again, with joint variation, the variables are always multiplied together. So the only time you're going to have something where it's division is where it's inverse. Whether it's direct or joint, you're just multiplying more variables together when it comes off this one. Okay, now here's where we're going to change gears just a little bit on this one. Because on these, if it's joint variation, they would have to do something a little bit different. And we'll show you what they would kind of do for this one. So for this one, we're going to actually ask you to write an equation where y varies jointly with temperature, which we'll call T. What is temperature in chemistry and everything? Is it K? Is that what they use? Everybody taking chemistry right now? That's Kelvin. Okay, they use T for temperature sometimes. Sometimes K is Kelvin. Okay, so they can kind of vary a little bit. Okay, so we're going to vary jointly with temperature T and also with pressure. And pressure, we'll call it P. Okay, now if you've got some of these, and again, there's no numbers on this one, so you don't have to worry about putting any kind of numbers in this part of it yet. So no numbers to plug in, so you don't have to worry about anything on this one. But here's kind of what you have to go through. As soon as you see, and it's almost always going to be y. As soon as you see those two things, the y varies. As soon as you see the varies part, that's always going to be y equals k. So they give you a variable and they say varies. Basically, that part is it's that part, and the varies part, that's always going to be the equals k part. That's going to be there. And then everything after that is just based on what they're doing. So if it varies joint with temperature and pressure, you just put k times T times P. Okay. And then some of the problems. Now, some problems they'll just let you leave it like this and you're good. Some of the problems after that, they'll do like they would do on the problems back here. Well, then they'll tell you, all right, here's some numbers to plug in, and then you plug in the numbers. But some of these problems, you only have to do that. It's just going to be, here's an equation we've got, here's a sentence. Take this sentence and change it back into a equation so we can kind of figure out what's going on here. And then again, sometimes they'll ask you to plug in some numbers, and then you do it just like we're doing on other problems. So let's do y varies inversely with the square of t. So it starts with y, so we go with there. And again, as soon as you see the varies part, and again, every one of those will have the varies part. That's the equals k. Okay, and then everything after that tells you what to do. When it says inverse, that means it's got to go over whatever the next variable is. So if it's inversely with the square of t, we're going to put over t, but it's t squared because it's a square of t. So then you just put k over t squared. All right, and then one more. Okay, so we're going to do y varies jointly. With the square of p and the square root of t. And then inversely with z. All right, I'll give everybody a second to write that down. Okay, and again, just take it one little piece at a time. It starts with y, so you start with the y. And again, as soon as you see the word varies, that varies is your equals k part that we're looking for. Okay, and then everything after that tells you where to go. The next part we've got is jointly with the square of p and the square root of t. So then we're going to put p squared and the square root of t, so then square root of t. And then when you see the inverse, that means that's got to be on the bottom. So then we're going to put that over z. Okay. Again, that's just all. Everything here is just trying to get you to kind of go back and hammer home that anything that you do, if it's direct, it's going to direct or joint, it's going to be on top. Anything that's inverse, it's going to be underneath the k. So direct or joint, it's on top where you multiply it by the k. Anything that says inverse, it's going to be underneath the k value. And again, sometimes they'll tell you then that p is this much and t is this much and y and z. They'll give you the numbers to plug in, and then you just plug in the numbers and just work it out from there to see what values you can get.